Hello, 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 and hello. Welcome, everybody. As you see on the screen, we are in Leviticus chapter 5. So let's go ahead and continue with our reading. And a person, if sins, conditional statement, so it doesn't guarantee that they're going to sin, although we do know everybody does sin. But this is more referencing when it occurs. If a person sins, and in the hearing, the utterance of an oath, meaning if they make an oath, I'm not going to sin, and is a witness whether he has seen or know of the matter, whether they have witnessed it by seeing it or witnessed it by coming to know about it. If not, he does tell it, and he bears the guilt. So if he doesn't tell others so this would be the equivalent of if someone I know is stealing, and I know about it either by the fact that I witness it myself or the fact that I come to know it by someone else who was there. If I choose not to tell anybody of it and don't tell anybody, then I bear the guilt of it. It weighs on my back. Because now I'm basically going every day going, oh man, I remember they did this thing. And so every time that someone talks about telling the truth and being honest, and I know I'm not being honest, then now I have a problem and it's going to weigh on my back. That guilt is kind of shared between me and another person. So it would be as well as the equivalent of I'm guilty by association. That guilt is on me by association because I'm also taking part in what they're doing by not making it come to know. And it says, or if a person touches anything unclean. So now they're changing it from you knowing about a sin that someone does and you're not saying something. And this does not mean I'm saying something because I want to drag their name down. This is talking about saying something because it's devastating everybody. And so this would be like who's guilty of murdering someone. A good example of this movie is in one of the God's Not Dead movies. They have a boy who starts a fire, and because he starts a fire, he ends up killing this African guy who's a minister, and nobody knows who did it. Nobody knows who started the fire, and because of that, the guilt stays on his back. I've also seen that same uh, idea happen in one of the episodes of Little House on the Prairie, where one of the boys who lives with Charles Ingalls, he starts a fire, and the fire ends up killing a woman and a baby. But it's the same principle. So now they're changing over to, and on top of that, if you touch anything that's unclean, this would be under the old covenant, which means you couldn't touch a dead body or anything that would be declared by God as unclean. Whether it was a carcass of a beast, see, the body of a beast, even if it was for a good reason, even if the good reason was, let me get this dead animal out of my house so it doesn't stick up the house, you weren't able to touch it. But again, a conditional state of a beast, unclean, or the carcass of a livestock, unclean. So whether it's an animal that happens to wander in your house, or whether it's a livestock, one that you own to take care of your crops and stuff that dies, or the carcass of creeping things that are unclean, and he is aware of it, and he shall be unclean and guilty. So he shares in the uncleanness by touching the unclean. So that's why in the Old Testament, you were not allowed to touch the dead, because you would be spreaded with that uncleanliness. Now, the guilt part, I can't say I really understand it all too much, other than the fact of uncleanliness being connected to guilt, but I'm still not quite sure how the carcass being unclean would make someone guilty. So let's see if we can find that out, okay? So what I asked Google is, how does touching a dead body make someone guilty and unclean? So I'm gonna let you read with me. In certain religious and cultural contexts, specifically the Mosaic Law of the Old Testament, touching the body makes a person ritually unclean. So ritually unclean, that's how, well, this will basically, just as it says, unclean in a ritual sense and potentially guilty. Now, notice it doesn't say they are guilty, it says potentially guilty if they do not undergo a specific purification process. This uncleanliness is a symbolic state, not an indication of moral wrongdoing. So they're not guilty in that sense. So if you were to touch the body, you're not guilty in the sense of you've done something wrong. You're guilty in the sense of being ritually unclean. Okay, so that's the basic context of it. So I just wanted to give that to you. Now let's go back. Or if he touches uncleanliness human, someone who has become uncleanliness, whatever the uncleanliness which a man may be defiled with, and he is aware of it, when he realizes it, then he shall be guilty. Because you're guilty of, basically, you're guilty by what you happen to know, is the essence of this. Now, immediately my mind thinks of that woman who was bleeding for 12 years. When she touched the hem of Jesus, that's why she touched the clothing, not the body, okay, of Jesus. She touched the clothing because she wanted to get healed, but she didn't want to spread her guiltiness or her uncleanliness. Because first of all, she knows she's uncleanly, right? Which makes her in the part of when you realize it, then you shall be guilty. So she's guilty of a purification uncleanliness. Because no one wants to touch her, no one wants to help her to become clean, right? Because it's like, how would I equate this? It'd be the equivalent of her situation basically being, I can't put a Band-Aid on a large cut that I have that's continuously bleeding until the bleeding first stops, kind of idea. Now that might not be the best idea, but it's the closest one I got. So like, if you have a broken arm and it's bleeding really bad and you're trying to put a bunch of Band-Aids on it, they're not going to stick. You know, the blood, it's going to be bleeding too bad to be able to ever stop the blood from pouring out. So even if she was able to do a ritual for cleanliness, she would just be guilty again the next moment that she bleeds. She would be ritually unclean again. So it'd be like wasting your time of doing a cycle after cycle. Let me go cleanse myself. Okay, I gotta do it again. Okay, I gotta do it again. And imagine doing that every day, day after day after day. So she's like, I only want to touch Jesus's garment so that as to not spread my uncleanliness, which is why it says here, what if anyone touches uncleanliness human, and that does go both ways. Whether you are purified and you're not uncleanly, and you happen to touch someone who is uncleanly, or whether they are uncleanly and they touch you. Now, in this case, if Jesus was just a normal human being and not God, and he was not aware of everything, and she managed to touch the hem of his garment, he didn't know about it, then he would not have that guilt, but he would still be unclean, if that makes sense. Okay? And it says, or if a person swears, speaking thoughtlessly with his lips to do evil, this would be making an oath and lying about it. Because that's what that word swear here means. As we see swear in this context, it would be to take an oath. Okay, to make an oath or take an oath. Okay, and he doesn't give thought to, oh no, I took an oath, now I'm held accountable to that oath. And with his lips do evil, that means now he's lied. It would be the equivalent of going, yes, I promised to be there at this time. Or even without the word promise, if I simply today say, I will be here at this time, and I'm not there at that time, well, now I've made an oath with my mouth, even though I haven't made a promise. I've made an oath that, because I've designated this time I'm going to be at this place. Well, now if I'm not there, now with my lips, I'm doing evil. Maybe not as evil as intentionally lying, but it's still as bad. Or to do good in whatever, in all, whatever is, may pronounce that a man by an oath. So whether you're doing evil or whether you're doing good, it doesn't matter. Okay. So let me give an example of both of them for you. Okay. So the speaking thoughtlessly with his lips, that would be, like I said, the equivalent of going, okay, I don't want my friend to get in trouble, so I'm gonna lie, but I'm not exactly going to lie straightforward. I'm gonna lie for them. So that would be like, I know my friend was drunk and he got into a car accident, but I don't want him to go to prison because I love him. And because I love him, I want him to stay out of jail because I think that's what's best in my own eyes. And because of that, I'm going to pretend that he was with me when he wasn't with me. And although I'm not going to outright answer the question, if they say, hey, was he here at this time doing this car accident? I would not answer that, but I would say he was at my house. And let's say in my mind, I go, he was at my house earlier that day, but I don't specify earlier in that day as to what time he was there, right? And they don't ask, then I'm basically portraying something as truth that's not truth. And if I open my mouth to say something and it wasn't true, and he wasn't at my house at the time that they're talking about, so it would be like the investigator going, was John at your house at 3 o'clock? And I go, John was at my house, yes. And they don't bother going at 3 o'clock because that's what they're asking. Then I'm doing evil with my lips by making an oath to make it seem as though he was there when he wasn't there at that time. Now, the part about doing evil is even like, doing good is even if, let's say I say to someone, hey, I'm going to be at your house at 2 o'clock. Let's go to the restaurant. And now I'm not at your house at 3 o'clock. And I don't show up till 4. Well, I gave my oath that I would be at your house at 3 o'clock. And the purpose of it would be to do good. There's nothing wrong in what event we're trying to do. But I still thoughtlessly spoke and made an oath without thinking about it. And that's what that would reference. Okay. Whatever it is may pronounce that a man, by an oath, see right there, may pronounce that a man, this would be a person, ha'adim, by an oath. It's either ha'adim or ha'adam. I think it's ha'adim, by an oath, and he is unaware of it, right? Unaware of it. So in the case of being unaware of it, that would be like the same situation where I'm going to be at your house, and I think I'm going to be and I don't say, hey, I'm going to be at your house at 4, but in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to be at your house at 4, and he thinks in his mind, okay, he's going to be in my house as soon as he wakes up in the morning. Now that would be the equivalent of we're both being unaware of what time we're talking about that we're actually going to meet. Now, I actually had this happen the other day, a similar situation on a live on TikTok where in the comments, one guy was talking about antichrists, as in people who allow the spirit of the devil into them, and by doing that, they deny the deity of Jesus, they deny him being the Messiah, and therefore become just as guilty of being an antichrist, but they are not the antichrist themselves, as in the antichrist to come before Jesus that I'm talking about. And I was talking about the antichrist as in the man of destruction the one that would make war against the saints specifically. Okay. And because both of us were unaware of which Antichrist we were talking about, I knew the Antichrist I was talking about, but it was not the one he was talking about. And I didn't know that he was talking about a different one specifically. Although I should have picked up on that because he did say the verses, and he did use the word Antichrists with an S. And he was probably unaware that I was talking about the Antichrist, not a Antichrist. Okay. So we were both unaware of it. And it says, then he shall be guilty in one of these matters. In any of these matters, he shall be guilty. Okay. And it shall be when he is guilty in one of these matters, then he shall confess that he has sinned. That's having related to the fact of having to know that you're guilty in that specific thing. And he shall bring his trespass offering, so that's a different type of offering, to Yahweh, Yahweh being Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but from a singular standpoint, for his sin, which he has committed, a female of the flock, this is what he's to bring, a lamb or a kid of the goats, so depending on what he chooses to bring, as a sin offering, so shall make atonement for him, the priest, concerning his sin. So in other words, basically, if you are guilty of this trespass, you bring either a lamb or a goat as a sin offering, a trespass offering specifically, and you stand outside of the door or entrance of the tabernacle, and you cover its head, and then you kill it, likely by cutting its throat, and then you make a sin atonement. But you're not the one that goes into the Holy of Holies to make that atonement. The priest does. That's why it says priest here. Okay? The priest for him makes the atonement. And if not, he is able to bring a lamb. So if he's not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring for a trespass which he has committed 2 turtle doves. So if you don't have a lamb, right, then you have to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to Yahweh. One as a sin offering and one as a burnt offering. So one as, let me unalive it, and then I think with the sin offerings they end up eating the meat of it after it's been offered, and then one as a burnt offering where they just burn it up. And he shall bring them to the priest, but the priest is the one that takes them into the Holy of Holies. And who shall offer that which is for the sin offering first, and wring off its head? Likely this means to cut off its head from its neck, but not shall divide it completely. So if he cuts off the head, but he doesn't separate it down the middle, and he shall sprinkle some of its blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood he shall drain out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. And the second he shall offer as a burnt offering. So with the sin offering, as you saw, they cut off the head, then they split it down the middle. Blood of they sprinkle on, so this would be, use your fingers and sprinkle it on the altar, and then the rest of the blood that's in that in those pieces they pour on the base of the offering, and that would be the sin offering. But the second turtle dove or pigeon that he brings is a burnt offering, and the manner in which they will do it, as it says, according to the prescribed manner, so shall make atonement on his behalf the priest for the sin which he has committed, and shall be forgiven him. So atonement is made, then the sin is forgiven. But if not, he is able to bring 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, or a lamb. What shall he do? Then he shall bring for his offering, which he who sinned, a tenth of an ephah of fine flour. So if you can't bring, let's say you don't have turtle doves, you don't have pigeons, you don't have lambs, okay, bring a tenth of your ephah, tenth of your fine flour offering as a sin offering. So there was many different ways you can make your offering depending on what you happen to have. No, he shall put it on it oil, so no oil in it, nor shall he put frankincense in it, for it is a sin offering. It has to be pure. Okay, and he shall bring it to the priest, and shall take the priest of it, a full handful as a memorial portion. So grab a handful of it and burn it at the altar according to the offering made by fire to Yahweh. It is a sin, and shall make atonement for him, the priest, for his sin that he has committed in one of these matters, and it shall be forgiven him. The rest shall be the priest's as a grain offering. And spoke Yahweh to Moses, saying, so if a person commits a trespass that and unintentionally in regard to holy things of Yahweh, so that now they're speaking about like if you have done a sin offering, or sorry, if you have done a sin, but it's been unintentional, and it's in regards to you went into the temple and you weren't wearing the garments, or something that where you just happen to forget. Then he shall bring his trespass offering, because he's made a trespass. He's made a breaking of the rule. He must bring a ram without a blemish from the flocks, with your valuation silver of shekels, of according to the shekel of the sanctuary. So it has to be equal in value, basically, as the trespass offering, and that for the harm he has done in regard to the holy thing, he shall make restitution. And a fifth shall add to it, and give it to the priest. So the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering, and it shall be forgiven him. So the idea of the priest being the one who does the offering, as I said before, is the same principle as. So if I was to equate this today to you, it would be the example of, let's say that when Christ died on the cross, he did not make it to where you can go into the Holy Holies, into God's presence yourself. But let's say he said, okay, well, from now on, you make your offering to me and I take your offering into God's presence. So, I'm sorry, Lord, I ask for repentance, and you speak to Jesus, and then Jesus takes takes your offering and your prayer and your repentance of your heart, and he takes that to the Father. That would be the equivalent if that were to go on today. Now, luckily, we're able to actually go into the Holy Holies, but I was using an example here to kind of relate this to you. And if a person sins and commits one of these things by the commandments of Yahweh, the Trinity, which forbidden are to be done, and not though he does know it, meaning he's not aware of it, and yet he is guilty. This would be the equivalent of agnoema in the New Testament. You're doing a sin, but you're unaware of it, and shall bear his iniquity. Okay, he still bears the guilt of it, but he's unknowingly bearing that guilt. He's not going to feel the guilt because he's unaware of what he's doing wrong, but he's still going to be guilty. He's still going to be just as guilty, regardless. That's why Yahweh in the Old Testament goes to King Abimelech and warns King Abimelech not to take Sarah as his woman, even though Abimelech doesn't know that Sarah is married. He's still guilty of doing something, but he's unaware of it. And he shall bring a ram without blemish from the flock, with its value of a trespass offering to the priest, so shall make atonement for him, the priest, regarding his ignorance being he doesn't know, in which he erred. So that would be like, I made a mistake. Oh my goodness, I made a mistake, and I'm unaware I made a mistake. I'm so sorry, right? And he not did know, meaning he still doesn't know about it, but someone else knows about it. Look, I know you don't know you did a sin, but you did a sin, and and you're unaware of it. Maybe you don't believe me that it's a sin, but you're still guilty, kind of thing. And it shall be forgiven him, even though he doesn't know about it. So even agnoema has to get dealt with. Is a trespass offering, it surely he has trespassed against Yahweh. So I hope this has made sense, that whether you know about it or whether you know about it, there's offerings that have to be made. based on the current situation, whatever the current situation is, whether you know about it, you don't know about it, whether you are the person who is unclean yourself, or whether you touch someone who's unclean and they're guilty by transference of guilt, transference of being uncleanly. And then there's offerings made based on the specific circumstances. So anyway, guys, thank you for listening. I'll see you at the next recording.